Our questions are based on this narrative here. Let's see what we have. Consider the following structured note offered by Bay White Financial. What do we got here? 80% principal protected structured note is linked to the performance of the S&P 500 Healthcare Sector Index. Start date today, maturity date 6 months from now, issuance price 102% to face value. Here's our face value, 1,000, so we must pay 1,020 since it's being issued at 102% of its face value. At maturity, you will receive a cash payment for each $1,000 principal amount note of $800 plus the additional amount, which may be zero. Here's the additional amount down here. You will receive the greater of 100% of the returns on the S&P 500 Healthcare Sector Index in excess of 5% above the current spot price of the SIXV or zero. So that's a call. That's a call option basically. And the strike price is whatever the price of the index is multiplied by 1.05. It's 5% above that spot price. So you will receive all the gains above that strike price, but you're only 80% principal protected, 20% principal at risk. Well, when it says 20% principal at risk, you still got to get, it says here you're going to get 800 plus the additional amount. You still got to get that from Bay White. So your credit risk is the whole thing. Even though it says you only have 20% principal at risk, you still got to get your original principal back. So you do have risk exposure from Bay White until you get paid. As a financial analyst for a wealth management advisory firm, you have been tasked with comparing the features of the Bay White Financial LLC structured note with those of a similar exchange-traded standalone derivative instrument alternative in order to make a recommendation to the firm's clients. Well, we know it's a call option, right? Which of the following statements best describes the derivative instrument that is embedded in the Bay White Financial LLC structured note? Structured note has an embedded long futures contract. Well, we know it's not a long futures contract because we can get 100% of everything that is 5% above the current price of the index right now. If it were a futures contract, that means the issuer, Bay White, would be or would have risk on the left side of the distribution if the returns were negative. Our lowest amount that we can get is zero. It's either zero or we get some payoff. Well, what's the payoff of an option? It's the maximum of zero or ST minus X, right? And that's exactly how the payoff was described. The structured note has an embedded long call option, so far so good, with the S&P 500 Healthcare Sector Index as an underlying. That's exactly what it has. And C, the structured note has an embedded short put. Not a short put, it's a long call. So think of this as the price of SIXV at termination. Here is what we'll pay, negative C naught for the call option. It has a strike price, which is 1.05 times whatever the price of the index is, just 5% higher. And at that point, it starts gaining value. This is not the payoff, this is a profit chart, right? If we want a payoff chart, it looks like this. It's zero all the way to the strike price, then it goes up. But since we pay for the option, I've drawn the profit payoff chart here. Which of the following statements best contrasts the credit risk of the Bay White Financial LLC structured note with the counterparty credit risk of an investor entering into the embedded exchange-traded derivative on a standalone basis? Well, the key word here is exchange-traded. If we entered into the exchange-traded derivative on a standalone basis, who is our counterparty? Counterparty would be the clearinghouse, right? So let's see what we have. We can eliminate A and B very quickly because it refers to the counterparty as a financial intermediary. Only C has the counterparty as the exchange or its clearinghouse, which is true. These two are wrong because of the counterparty. So let's just get rid of the rest of the option here. An investor in the Bay White structured note assumes the credit risk of Bay White Financial LLC for 20% of the note's face values. The remaining 80% is principal protected. Well, yeah, sure, 80% is principal protected, but you still got to get it from this guy. It is like me saying, lend me $100. I'll make a bet. If the bet pays off, I'll pay you $150. If the bet doesn't, I'll pay you $80. You may think you only have $20 at risk, but you got to knock on my door and get that $80, right? The whole thing is at risk, so not just the 20%. You still got to get the money back, so we can get rid of A+. Plus. We don't have a financial intermediary with an exchange-traded derivative. An investor in the Bayview structured notes assumed the credit risk of Bay White Financial for 80% of the note's face value, as remaining 20% is associated with the embedded derivative. Well, you could argue that. Sure, 80%, because worst case scenario, you go back and get 80%, but what if it pays off? Right? What if the whole thing pays off? Well, it's more than 80%. It's the whole thing. So you can get rid of that one too. Investor in the Bay White structured note. Oh, also get rid of that one. It also is using a financial intermediary as the counterparty for OTC. That would be true, OTC. The second part would be true. An investor in the Bay White structured note assumes the credit risk of Bay White Financial LLC for 100% of the note's face value. Yeah, because that's what you gave them. While an investor entering into the SIXV derivative on a standalone basis assumes the counterparty credit risk of an exchange or its clearinghouse. Since the second part is the only one that is correct of the three, you have to accept this one. It is for 100% of the note's face value. And I would go a little bit further, and I would say 100% of the payoff of the structured note, whatever that happens to be, not just the face value. Which of the following statements most accurately describes the liquidity of the Bay White structured note versus that of the embedded exchange-traded derivative? The Bay White structured note is likely to be more liquid than the standalone SIXV call option. Okay, let's stop right there. The Bay White structured note is issued by a particular financial company. The call options here are traded on an exchange. They're going to be far more liquid than those traded by the company, because I can't simply just go to the open market and trade my structured note. I can only redeem it with the company itself. So saying it's more liquid, we can get rid of it right there. You don't need to read the rest. Besides, if you read the rest, it had nothing to do with liquidity. The Bay White structured note is likely to be more liquid than the standalone SIXV call option. Again, get rid of that. It gives you another reason why it wouldn't be, but it just wouldn't be more liquid. It's not traded. Structured notes such as the Bay White Financial LLC structured note often involve greater cost, yes, lower liquidity, and less transparency than an equivalent standalone derivative instrument. While the exchange-traded SIXV derivative contract is standardized and trades in a liquid, transparent market. Can't get more right than that. Which of the following statements best describes how an investor should evaluate the terms of the Bay White Financial LLC structured note as compared with the standalone derivative price in order to make a recommendation? So let's just review here. We're going to pay $1,020. We're going to get $800 for sure, plus 100% of the return above whatever the strike price is, increased by 5%. So the question is, you're going to get $800 plus the return. Can you buy the option for less than $220? And if you can buy the option, let's say you can buy the option for $50, why pay $1,020? Why not just pay the $50, keep the rest of your money, keep the other $970? If this doesn't pay off, you got $970 instead of $800. And if it does pay off, well, you only have to make the $50 back to get your money back. You don't have to make $220 to break even. You just need $50. You could do it cheaper yourself. Anytime you see a structured note, if you have access to markets, you can do it cheaper yourself. Let's see, the Bay White Financial LLC structured note issuance price of 2% above par value should be compared with the upfront premium for a 6-month SIXV call option with an exercise price at 5%. Well, it's not just the 2% you're paying. You're paying 2% more than the $1,000. You are paying that $20 because you're not getting that part back, but you're only being guaranteed $800, or at least principal protected for $800. So it's not the 2%. We can get rid of that. The Bay White Financial LLC structured note 20% principal at risk should be compared with the upfront premium for a 6-month SIXV call option. Well, this is just the 20%. What about the extra 2%, right? We can get rid of that one. The Bay White Financial LLC structured note issuance price of 2% above par value plus the 20% principal at risk should be compared with the upfront premium for a 6-month call option with an exercise price at 5%. Yeah, because you got to make the whole thing back. The 20% from 800 to 1,000, but we're paying a 2% premium, so you got to make it back to 1,020. So if you can buy that call option for less than $220 for 6 months, you should do it, and I guarantee you, you can buy it less than that.